What is up, people of the extranet? Tyler here with Random Automotive. Today got a treat for you. This is a 1992 Chevy S-10. This is going to be one of the new projects on the channel. It's got a pretty decent shaped interior, minus a few cracks on the dash there, but we're going to get that taken care of. But today we're going to work on replacing the instrument cluster with Dakota Digital. So we'll get started. So this existing instrument cluster has a little bit of a problem. Which of course I hate this design already. I don't know, I mean, some people think it's kind of quirky, and it is, but not a big fan of it. But two things are wrong with it, really three things. The voltage meter is almost pegged out all the time, and I don't believe that to be accurate. When I measure it with a multimeter, it's where it should be, about 14 when running. The second thing is the coolant temperature gauge doesn't work at all. The third thing is the odometer just stopped working. The truck really does have 100,000 miles on it, or a little bit above that now probably, but the last owner, I haven't drove it much, said within the last couple of weeks or so, the little gear apparently fell out into the floorboard and it stopped working. So, which I believe it, judging by the shape of this interior. It's just immaculate. The truck needs a paint job on the outside. But let's fire it up really quick. Because why not? The good old alternator whistle of the 4.3. So another problem I'm having is you might hear a hissing noise. I got a vacuum leak in this. There's a little actuator, and I'll show you that too, that comes out. But anyway, not the purpose of the video. So some people may say, why Dakota Digital? Well, I've actually used them before, and they're pretty tried and true. If you look over here at the 78 Jeep, I have got, sorry, it's a mess in here, Dakota Digital Gauges in it, and these were just plug right in and play. And all you got to do now is turn the key on. You hear my little aftermarket GM buzzer. This little trim piece broke off, but I should have gave it gas first. I haven't started this thing in like 2 weeks. Let's try it again. Of course, no problems. But gauges work great, and all it was a little bit of wiring. And that sim control panel right now is behind there. You can see the top of it right there. Sweet. So the biggest hurdle with this is it's not direct fit like they say it is. You're actually going to have to, as you can see, these are your instrument gauges. Then you've got a faceplate. You've got to use the existing doohickey there, pull it all out, and then I guess use a rotary tool to cut it. Hopefully I've got one. And then you got to RTV this thing in and then put this behind it. I don't know. I mean, the only complaint I would have is that if you're going to pay $700 for this, like I did, I would at least like to see it just a direct fit right in the deal. I mean, I don't know how much more money it would cost Dakota Digital to do it, but honestly, I would pay another $100 if this was just full direct fit. So don't advertise it as direct fit if it's not. But either way, it's pretty neat, and we're going to get started. Okay, so the first step you're going to want to do is disconnect your battery, which we have done. Okay, so the next step we're going to do is we're going to move these two screws underneath this headlight switch. We're going to remove the two screws under this bezel. Come along. There's only one screw here. We'll have to get one to replace it, but the HVAC control's got to come out. There's a bunch of wires in there you'll have to pull out, and vacuum hoses, and then remove these two screws up top here. And I think we are good, so let's do that real quick. So on the headlight switch side, this bottom one came off with just a pull tab. The second one actually has a tab that goes around the bottom there that you'll have to kind of pry up and pull down. So just be careful of that, not to break that connector. Okay, so I got everything loose minus these vacuum hoses. I don't know if I'll be able to work around that, but we'll see. I may have to end up taking those off too. The cable has a clip that you got to be careful of. I actually broke it, so I got to get another one. No big deal. So once you get those off, you see, it's kind of hard to see with no light, right there. And over here, right there, two 10 millimeters got to come out. Okay, I told you wrong. There's two more. One there at the bottom, same place on the other side. Those got to come out too. Okay, so once that bezel comes off, you will have four 10 millimeters that you'll have to get out. You may need a deep well to get over that stud. So it does take a little bit of force because there is a hard plug back there. So you kind of got to wedge it out. I notice if you see there, my shifter cable's still hooked up, so I'm going to have to unhook it. But it should just pull right back. There's a plug connector back here, as you can see. and it grips on that, and that's the reason you got to pull kind of hard. So let me see what this shifter cable is. Okay, so to get the shifter cable off, I had to pull the instrument cluster out to show you. Two little bolts there, they look like 5.5s. You take this little plastic piece here off, and it should just pop right out. Because I'm not using it, I went ahead and cut it because I'm not going to use it anymore. Don't cut yours, don't do as I do. Just say as I say and take those little millimeter bolts out. The reason I cut it is I'm not going to end up using it anymore. They've got kits if I want to use the shift cable that goes with the newer gauge system, so I'm not too worried about it. If that's something you want to do, feel free to, but I wouldn't recommend it. I'd say do it the right way. Okay, so we've got 9 5.5 millimeter bolts around the bezel here, 2 on each side, 2 at the bottom, and 3 up top that've got to come off. Okay, so now on the back side, all of these light bulbs that just twist and turn, they've got to come out. And I believe you've got to pull the connectors through these little plastic pieces, so they've got to snap off too. Alrighty, so that is separated. We'll have to work on getting all of that off, but good to go. So I had to pull off the shifter mechanism thing, which was just 2 5.5 mils. And this should, if you line everything up, looks like it just slides right in. Maybe you have a little bit of trimming there, but it actually looks to fit pretty nicely. The next step, we'll set that aside for now. We've got to go and remove all these electronic servos and circuitry from the back of this portion where the gauges actually are, because we'll have to cut that out. So again, just 5.5 millimeters, and we've got. There's the gear right there for the odometer that fell off. That kept it from working. Oh well. For the oil pressure slash coolant temperature slash whatever that is, battery voltage, I believe, you've got some 8 millimeter funky looking bolts that've got to come out. Looks like there's 2 per gauge, and they're just little nuts that come off. Doesn't matter if you lose them. I'd keep up with them, but mine rolled right there, so no big deal. But you shouldn't need them again unless you want to go back to the original setup, which you would actually have to buy a whole new one of these anyway if you did that. Alrighty, so we now got this bezel free of any gauges. I'm going to use the teal face plate. I think that would match the age of this truck better. So it just slaps on over top there, but you're not done there. You've got to cut out a template, and let me show you how you can do that. If you look underneath, you basically just want to leave and cut all this out using a rotary tool. You want to leave just a little lip all the way around. And really, theoretically speaking, you could leave everything at the bottom just below the gauge light, so you could cut right here. You're not going to see this anymore. These actually won't work now. So it's not a huge deal just to cut a straight line across the bottom. Leave your little bit just past that fuel gauge rail, a little bit at the top, and a little bit around the edges. And that's just so you can put a little bit of RTV to hold this in. But you can see it fits perfectly, and it'll cover all that up. So let me see if I got a rotary tool I can cut this out with. Alrighty, so it's a few hours later. I had to go to town and get a Dremel. So I was sitting here on the AC unit, got the original bezel, and you see I cut this center section out. Now, there's a couple things to note. It's really hard to cut along this lip and not gouge the plastic somewhere else. So you got to be careful with that. There's a few loose ends I got to pull off, but I did end up filing this down on this side, so it is nice and even. And then, so what will happen now is we'll put a bead of RTV along the sides, and then the teal ends will cover all of that up, and it looks good. There's one little spot right there. I think that'll be okay. That right there is covered by the overall bezel. So, you know, be a little careful when you do this, but the little 2 mistakes I see there, those will be covered by everything else. So you shouldn't really notice it. You might notice that one a little bit. And then on the back side, you might want to rub a little RTV in and just make sure that it sets flushly on there. Okay, so to make this fit in this casing, every one of these little posts you see like that, I ended up having to Dremel down about 3/4 of an inch. Like I said, I wish this was a little bit more plug and play for you guys, but I guess that's the best Dakota Digital has to offer. It's got it set flushly there, and you can see it sits nice and good in there now. That's ready to go. One thing I did notice is the trip reset's got a hole in the middle of that, and that might bother me, but it is what it is. So let's assemble this unit back together and we'll finish up. Oh, also, I took the printed circuit board off the bottom. All the indicator lights I tore out, or took off, I didn't tear them out. And then you can, those little blue clips where you see the little plug-ins, all those will just pop out with your hand, and you just take that sheet off. So I've got the instrument cluster back together over there. What we're going to do next is we're going to come down to this 15-pin connector, and we want to figure out a few things. We want to know, one, where our turn signals are. If you want to hook the OBD2 up, we're going to clean that mess up too, by the way. If you want to hook, or I'm sorry, OBD1 in this truck, but if you want to hook that up to it, and like brake light, etc. So what we'll do is I've got the battery hooked back up. I've turned the key on. I've got a testing light here. I've just hooked it to a negative on the door. Wait for that buzzing to go away. And one by one, so what I usually like to do here, I'm going to turn on the left turn signal. And I'm just going to tap pin by pin until I find which one's blinking. That was easy enough. So now I went to the right turn signal. Nothing there. Still nothing. That's probably a ground pin there. Okay. That's not our turn signal. It's solid on though. So that's probably your check engine light or something like that. Nothing there. Another solid light on, but not the one blinking. Nothing there. Nothing there. Ah, there it is. So the first one on the left is left turn signal. The third one on the bottom there is your right turn signal. So now we know where those wires are. We'll turn off the turn signals. And what we'll do now is we should be able to, I think the lights should flash. This might be kind of hard to do, but what I like to do now is go through every one and flash the high beams until you find the one that's coming on when you flash this switch. So let me do that really quick. So what I learned is I had to plug the headlight switch back in. And if I go to the third pin right here and then flash my high beams, I get contact. So that third pin from the left on the top row are your high beams. Put the pin on the first pin on the bottom row, and when I turn the headlights on, I get that that first pin illuminates. So that tells me that that is your interior illumination, or what you can use for dim. So I think that's all I'm going to hook out of that. All I need to know is left turn signal, right turn signal, and high beams. I'm not going to hook up the service engine soon light or anything like that. So what I'll do next is I need to find an accessory power. And what I'll do is I can go to, let's say, this second pin right here without crossing anything. See if I can jam that in there. Now that might be our service engine soon light. So if I kill accessory power, it comes on. Now I just got to make sure if I start the truck and let it run for a second, it don't go back off. So let's start the truck off and see if it goes off momentarily. So we'll start the truck. I think it should be able to start with all this off. Perfect. You hear those vacuum lines leaking. Headlights are off. So that second pin will be your accessory power. Alright, and fourth pin over. Don't think I can show this, if you can see it hopefully. If I turn the key on, I get power for a second. When that buzzer goes off, it goes off. That's your seatbelt minder. So now you know that too. So that's all I'm going to hook up on this truck. So what I'll probably end up doing is this connector should just pull out. I'm going to pull the power off the truck again. Yep, there's just a tab on each side. You just got to work it out. I'm going to cut off the wires I need watching the video I just recorded and start wiring things up here in a minute. Had a little rain shower, but basically I buttoned everything back up, and those wire connections I talked about, I made those back there with some straight crimps, and my spaghetti's coming through here. I ran my ribbon cable down and underneath. I took this little plastic panel off, And temporarily this is just sitting on the floor there. But it does work. I have not wired up any sensors yet because I got to figure out where to go through the firewall at. But if I do turn the key on, if I can get it in there right, the gauges do come up and they are working. They're not actually flickering like that, but it's funny because I can see a lot more smudges on my camera, on my phone, than I do actually in person. But looks pretty sweet. So it's a little bit later. So I took this sensor off. I had to use one of the adapters. I got coolant everywhere. I had to drain some out and let it do its thing. So I've just got the wire running over here for now. We're going to have to, like I said, run it through the firewall. Since I had to add coolant, I'm letting the system bleed. I believe the thermostat just opened. So let's see if we got an accurate reading. Actually, the old sensor wouldn't read anything above 105 ever. And we got 156 right now, so looking good. So I'm gonna just check and make sure that nothing leaks. It's not a bad idea to put some sort of, I wouldn't say thread locker, but something to keep that from leaking. You know, like some of that tape or something like that's probably a good idea, as long as it's rated for the heat. I'm checking now. There is coolant down there, but that's what spilled earlier. You can see the old connector there, but it looks to be dry as a bone around it, so I'm just going to let this truck run, start adding coolant as it needs it, top it back off, and see what happens. It's actually the next week. Sorry for the delay, but life happens. Got everything buttoned back up. The installation process is just the reversal of taking it apart. Everything's good. Everything's back together. Let's turn the key on. Still can't get over how clean this truck is on the inside. It's pretty crazy. So I just programmed the odometer in. You can do that by holding the little switch you wire up. Everything's wired, and it's actually behind that little plate right there. The carpet, you can see it might be pushed up just a little bit. And all looks good. So I did drive the truck earlier. Everything is perfect with it. I'll go ahead and start it up. Minus the truck was idling a little low earlier. Probably will here in a minute. All the gauges worked in perfectly. You have to set the odometer to access the menu. You wire up your little switch. You hold down the 1 button while turning the key over, and you can just cycle through the settings to set that. No big deal. So let me show you a few modifications that I made to some of the sensors to make those work, because they're pretty important. So under the hood, the only modifications I really made was, if we go to the coolant temperature sensor, I had to use the adapter, and then I just put some Teflon tape on it, and no longer leaks, no longer has any problems at all, and it's good. I ran the wires temporarily, at least. I'm going to end up painting this truck here in the very, hopefully, near future. I ran them temporarily through here. I know the door closes on them, and I don't like that. They will go through the firewall when we're all said and done, but just for now. The oil sensor, that was a pretty big deal. It gave me a pretty big heartache. What we ended up having to do, and you can see it looks a little funny there, and I don't know how far I can get in there, especially with this engine hot. I had to get a 1/8 inch, 5-inch brass pipe, and I screwed it into the block down there because the new sensor, there wasn't enough room to screw the new one in. The old one actually came out ripped in half, and I had to get a easy out and get that thread out. It's a whole thing. Then I put a 1/8 inch angle adapter on, and then the sensor is all the way up at the top, and it still provides an accurate reading. Doesn't leak at all, no problems, and you can actually get to it relatively easy, whereas you couldn't before. I know that there's probably a few things that somebody would have to say about that, but that's the best we could do with this engine. Also understand that in the near future this 4.3 will come out. There'll be a 350 in here, so none of it really matters. It doesn't leak, it works. That's all that matters for now. For the fuel level sender and the speedometer, so they sent a speed cable sensor, kind of like is on that Jeep over there, and it basically goes right into the transmission and comes out. Let me crawl under here and I'll show you. So that didn't work because this truck has an electronic sensor, and you can see that big round circular thing with the plug going to it. That entire thing is the speed sensor, and when you pull it out, a bunch of transmission fluid comes out and all that good stuff. Well, that wouldn't work. The speed sensor that come with the Dakota Digital Gauges even though it said it worked on a 92 to, or up to a 93 S-10, it didn't work. And also the speedometer cable, or I'm sorry, that was the speedometer cable, the fuel level sender, we had to wire it in. So that pinout that y'all remember that was here, I just spliced into that. I looked up a diagram online, I'll try to put that in the description if I remember, and tapped into it. And then to get everything to work, like I said, when you turn up and you go to the startup menus, that should stop, okay. There is a few selectors. In the owner's manual of the new gauges, you'll want to select the period correct GM fuel sender, and that will get your fuel level accurate, and this has been. Speed is kind of the same thing. It'll give you a walkthrough on how to calibrate it, and it's 100% accurate. Okay, so we're going to go on a warm start. I am going to turn the air on just a little bit because it is 1,005 degrees out today, and we're going to go on a little drive. Now you see the flickering there of the camera. That's actually not occurring in real life. Or real life, I guess it is real life, but you know what I mean. It's actually not occurring. It's the refresh rate of the camera is not playing nice with the gauges. Alright, so we're making it down the road. Sorry that flicker rate is just awful, but you can see everything is working like it should be, best that you guys can tell. Alrighty, so we're getting on the highway here. You can see everything is working pretty nicely. Speedometer is 100% accurate with GPS. Fuel level looks good, oil pressure is good, temperature is reading good. Looks pretty sweet. Best we can tell from this terrible camera refresh rate, but if it works, it works. Also, if you turn the turn signals on, you can see they're blinking in their appropriate place. If you turn the headlights on, that is a new headlight switch, by the way, and flash the brights, you can see all of that is working perfectly. All right, guys and gals, that is going to do it for this video. If you did like it, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up. Also, if you have any questions about the gauges or anything in the wiring there, or anything about the truck in general, be sure to leave a comment and we'll try to get that answered. The next thing that we're going to do is the paint. I think I've got a guy lined up that wants to paint this thing, and we'll give some more information on that as we go along. It will be a different color. I will let you guys know what it will be when we get there. But until next time, we'll catch you in the next one.